asking Hamas to do something nice, asking Hamas to compromise is not a very straightforward thing. You know, Sinwar himself, who planned and plotted the 7th of October, is an utter fanatic, but a real fanatic, somebody willing to kill and die and doesn't care about that. And Sinwar, everything we know about him is that he is precisely of that type.
But do you not feel that something has to give here, that this has to get resolved somehow, and that the only way to do that is, as with all these situations, you have to eventually compromise in some way? And the problem for Netanyahu is that people think he is completely incapable of offering Hamas any compromise, and therefore there is no deal. So,
hi everyone, and welcome back to Open Your Eyes. Today we're diving into something that's been on my mind for a while now. Remember back in October when Piers Morgan was so adamant in his stance? He was a strong supporter of Israel, didn't tolerate any guests on his show defending Hamas, and openly expressed disgust at their actions. He was convinced that Hamas was the problem, that they were the ones being uncompromising. But now it seems like his stance has shifted, much like the changing winds of public opinion. It's almost as if he's aligning himself with whatever narrative gains traction. But what really caught my attention was watching Douglas Murray absolutely call him out on this inconsistency, delivering facts and straight talk that left no room for argument. And speaking of facts, let's not forget what really went down. Israel withdrew from Gaza in 2005, and instead of building a thriving state, Hamas funneled billions into constructing underground tunnels and enriching themselves. So while they were hiding away in their luxury apartments, the people of Gaza were left to suffer. It raises a big question. How do you negotiate with a group that doesn't want peace, that uses its own people as leverage? Let's get into it and see how Murray breaks it down. Stay tuned, because this is one debate you don't want to miss.
what they did on October the 7th was of such a heinous scale that Israel obviously had to respond with massive force as they've done. But you'll also be aware, as we head towards the first anniversary of what happened there, that this is an ongoing, increasing, massive problem worldwide for Israel and its reputation, because so many people, including the UK now under Labour government, they've just announced, as we're talking, they're going to suspend some arms sales to Israel. 30 of 350 licenses will be suspended due to a clear risk the weapons will be used by Israel in a way that could breach international law. So there is increasing pressure, as you know, around the world for this to get resolved. Increasing views expressed by many countries that what Israel's now doing it constitutes a war crime, and you and I have debated that many times. But do you not feel that something has to give here, that this has to get resolved somehow, and that the only way to do that is, as with all these situations, you have to eventually compromise in some way? And the problem for Netanyahu is that people think he is completely incapable of offering Hamas any compromise, and therefore there is no deal. So the families of the hostages still there, and hundreds of thousands of protesters in Israel on the street to Tel Aviv right now, they are of the firm belief that it's his own intractable position on this, which is not going to allow any kind of ceasefire to be achievable.
But there again, if I can say so, Piers, it's the same thing, which is the presumption that it's Netanyahu who is uncompromising. We end up with this, again, because Netanyahu is a democratically elected leader, and so it's assumed that some pressure can be brought to bear on him. In my view, it is not Netanyahu who's uncompromising. It's Hamas that's uncompromising. They could have handed back the hostages last October. They could have not done this. I mean, they could have tried to build a state since 2005, when Israel withdrew from the Gaza, and handed the place over to them. Hamas could have used the billions of dollars and pounds and euros that British and European and American taxpayers gave them since 2006. They could have used those billions of dollars to build up Gaza. They could have made a booming in the good sense of the term, Mediterranean paradise. They could have created wealth for their people. But you know what they did? They built down instead of upwards. They built a tunnel network bigger than the London Underground for all of those years, and they squirreled away the money, just like Yasser Arafat did before them, and they made themselves rich. Why was Ismail Haniyeh worth billions of dollars? Why does Khalid Mashal, why is he worth billions of dollars? Why are their children like princelings who live in apartment complexes in Doha? Because they took the money of Americans and Brits and Europeans and they took it for themselves and kept the people of Gaza in immiseration and poverty. There has been since 2005 a complete counterfactual of what could have happened. But the Hamas leadership didn't want that. They have said themselves they want to use Palestinian children and their lives in order to pressurize the world. These are fanatics. They want the death of their own citizens, in order to get world opinion turned against Israel. Again, how do you negotiate with that? The assumption always is in the West today, because we're so sort of fat and lazy in our expectation that peace is the norm, and that historically it's the norm. We're so full of our own expectations and presumptions that we always think that wars end by some kind of compromise and coming around the table, to use the cliche. They don't. Historically, most wars end because one side wins and one side loses. And one of the reasons, in my view, why there is this endless rounds of war in this region is because the Israelis are never allowed to win, and Hamas, in this case, are always allowed to draw. And I think that that is simply to set up the precursor for the next conflict. If Hamas come out of this with a fighting capability, then there will be another round of this war in a couple of years. So when David Lammy and others say what we need to have is a peace deal, I'd say on what terms? Everybody wants peace except for Hamas and the fanatics. Everybody else wants peace. All of these people in the south, these kibbutzniks and the party-goers and others who were murdered on the 7th, all dreamed of peace with their Palestinian neighbors and brothers and sisters. Who stopped that peace being possible? Hamas, from 2005 and again to this very day.
As we wrap up this intense debate, I think it's fair to say that Piers got thoroughly dismantled here. Douglas Murray made his point crystal clear. The idea that the country is labelled as evil for defending itself when under attack is simply absurd. It's mind-boggling how all the attention gets shifted to Israel, scrutinising their every move, while Hamas, the ones who've been holding their own people hostage in poverty and fear, escape accountability time and again. Let's be real here. Hamas had the resources and opportunities to create something better for Gaza, but instead they chose to invest in terror rather than hope. Meanwhile, Israel, while not perfect, is condemned for defending itself against this constant threat. As Douglas highlighted, if a ceasefire were to happen right now, it's only delaying the inevitable. We've seen this pattern before. Israel gets attacked, they respond, and the world eventually tells them to compromise, to pull back, and it's only sets the stage for the next conflict. The real question is, how long can this go on? What will it take for Hamas to be held accountable for their role in this cycle of violence? So, if you're still standing with Israel and believe they have a right to defend their people, drop an Israeli flag in the comments below. Let's see where everyone stands. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.